Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. The tensions between the state of Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran and once again escalating. And in this video, we're going to give you guys the latest update on the situation in the Middle East. Let's get on with the show. Alright, you beautiful freedom fighters from across this planet. Let's talk about what is going on there. The threat to Israel, which is also a threat to the Western world, is simply the frontier right now when it comes to the fight against not just Islamism, but the axis of evil led by the Iranian regime. So, obviously, a few months ago, we had a close call when it came to a direct conflict between the Iranian regime and the rest of the world, directly with Israel specifically. The Americans managed to convince the Israelis to de-escalate the situation, despite the fact that Iran, for the first time since 1979, directly hit Israel in its territory. But there are more tensions now. It's not really surprising. It's been going on. It's been building up for months and months. Now, it could be any moment. It could still be weeks away or days away, months away. But the risk and the dangers are real. The threat is definitely real. The Israelis are stepping up their game. We got the Israel Air Force commander, Tomer Bar, in northern Israel, saying that we are ready when it comes to conflict directly with Hezbollah and Iran. It's different to Gaza because Hezbollah are directly linked to Iran. So hitting Hezbollah in Lebanon is basically the start of the wider conflict. Bar said, we are ready for war. There is a full responsibility on the Israeli Air Force to implement all the operational plans, and there will be a knockout punch as lethal as possible against an enemy we are familiar with, and there will be surprises. Who was the target of the strike against the Houthis? It was aimed at the entire Middle East, both at Nasrallah and Iran. And on this topic, I will tell you that throughout the entire war, we have maintained and we are maintaining an ability that if a war breaks out in the north and with Iran, we will rise to the occasion. 9 months, and we are all in, never letting down our guard as we understand the righteousness. And I leave here after the conversation with you strengthened, and we are prepared. Talking to, of course, also the armed forces, part of the Israeli Defense Forces. The one thing that we know for sure is that compared to any other conflict or semi-conflict that Israel had to deal with over the last few decades, and it's been regular, obviously. Israel never started any of the conflicts, obviously, since 1948. It's always been the Arab side that started this, but they always had to defend themselves. But there's been so many situations where it could have escalated, and the Israelis, depending on who the prime minister was at the time, always backed down eventually and made a lot of concessions. Now, since October the 7th, a lot of people have been surprised that Israel have not backed down. They haven't really changed their mind, despite a lot of pressure on Netanyahu's war cabinet, including people from inside Israel. The liberal left in Tel Aviv, for example, been pushing him to stop defending Israel. But they haven't actually changed their mind, despite pressure coming from Joe Biden's government. Obviously, they're still going. They're still defending themselves. And fighting against the threat, the direct threat from the Islamist side led by the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime obviously have been doing a number of small rallies because they don't have enough supporters inside Iran, because of course these are the Islamic occupiers. So, and we know that the reality of the situation is that the majority of Iranians who see themselves as hostages that have been taken by the Islamic occupiers since 1979. In fact, if you want to see the real Iranian people who are supporters of Israel and the Jews, they've been coming out on the streets. This is one example of what's happening inside Iran. Of course, the uprising against the Iranian regime continues. One example is this. It's a video of Iranian people, real Iranian people, chanting, "Death to Palestine." So they were chanting "Death to Palestine." They've been chanting throughout the last few months and years, "No Gaza, no Lebanon, my life is only for Iran. The Iranian people continue their fight back against the regime. That's why the Iranian regime can't really hold massive rallies inside Iran. So what they do, for example, what we've seen today, is they've sent their people to Yemen, south of Yemen, to hold rallies alongside the Houthis, another bunch of their puppets essentially in Yemen. This is what we are seeing from the Iranian regime in Yemen. The reason that they now choose to do these sort of things in Yemen is mostly because every time in recent years and recent months when the Iranian regime were trying to do big rallies inside Iran, obviously it's a small percentage of people in Iran who support the Iranian regime, but because it's a high population, they could bring out about a couple of million people, the supporters of the regime. But every time they try to do big rallies, the actual Iranian people end up disrupting the whole event and completely distracting the whole thing. And that's what they kind of stop bothering by they're doing things in Tehran. And every time they do something big in Tehran, like the funeral for the former president, Raisi, they have to close down the whole city. They have to shut down the whole thing. Because they can't really, in technically their own country, the Iranian regime, because it's their country now, they've taken over, they can't freely and openly hold big rallies. It's disgusting, right? Now, this is happening at the same time. While that's going on, we got, of course, the Iranian-backed Houthis also saying our response to Israel targeting of the Hudaydah is coming. And of course, the open source intel said, I expect a response Thursday night or Friday. Time will tell. But now it's Friday. We still haven't received any response from the nutters. It's just kind of funny because I'm not really sure if they were actually going to be doing anything. What they will probably end up doing is maybe send out some sort of drone and fail as usual. But it's not really going to be any real threat to Israel directly, unless it's the Iranian regime themselves. The IDF also released the latest footage from northern Gaza in terms of the operation still ongoing. They have the Iranian regime have essentially lost Gaza. The IDF have won. They're just trying to find where Yahya Sinwar is hiding and the rest of the high commanders in Gaza. But they don't have control of Gaza anymore when it comes to the Islamists. Now, the sad reality is obviously the Iranian regime who, funnily enough, despite historically being backed by Russia and China, they were the ones providing drones to Russia. But they are still actually, when it comes to the Houthis, the Chinese Communist Party, who claim to be a mediator, like, yeah, if you want world peace, President Xi says, yeah, China could help conduct peace talks, but they are still providing support for the Iranian regime, the Houthis through the Iranian regime, and of course the state of Qatar. We will talk about the role of the Chinese Communist Party as usual, but we also yesterday we had the situation in Gaza. Abu Shuja, I think we've talked about him before as well, the commander of the Islamic Jihad's military wing, it was targeted. They finally found him. He was injured, and because he was trying to throw it at the Palestinian security forces, obviously. And he was then evacuated to the hospital, when basically the complete chaos started happening. The Palestinian Authority's security forces were attempting to arrest him, obviously. Mahmoud Abbas ordered the arrest, while the Islamic Jihad operatives fired at the Palestinian Authority's headquarters in this protest. And Abu Shuja was obviously reportedly smuggled out of the hospital. And the Palestinian Authorities' attempt to arrest him was a complete failure. Like, this is the same Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas who claims that they are competent enough to be able to be able to actually lead the whole of the Palestinian territory. We can't trust Mahmoud Abbas to run his own team. They can't even get one of the amateurish Islamic Jihad jihadis. We do have a very short, few second video. You might be able to see the guy on the shoulder of the other person. That's Abu Shujra. That's the guy the Palestinian authorities were trying to arrest and failed massively. So yeah, that was only a few seconds. That was a mess. Of course, the Palestinian authorities once again failed to do the job they're supposed to be doing by taking out one of the other Islamic Jihadis commanders. Now, obviously, in the past, they've also indirectly and sometimes directly asked for the support of the Israelis when it comes to the West Bank situation, but they've also have their own problems with the settlers and all that. So it's a bit of a messed up relationship between Mahmoud Abbas and Netanyahu's side, because at times they have to cooperate when it comes to the threats from both Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. And on the other side, then they just have complete irrational arguments, both sides, about a small chunk of the West Bank, because the Palestinian side are refusing to give up despite the agreement in the 1940s. So all that's going on. Of course, we'll keep you guys posted on the rest of it. So we have a first super chat from Reform UK, probably not the official account. Thank you very much for the super chat saying, if there's any extraterrestrials alive out there, yeah, as if the aliens are going to come, they'll run away, right? Don't bother stopping off on Earth as the world has gone mad. Exactly. No, in fact, pick us up, please, and we can cruise around the galaxy and listening to Nine Simone and Tarastani. Actually, yeah, I genuinely believe over the last few decades, if the aliens had discovered Earth, they probably just gave up on it. Like, yeah, let's just leave here. It's not worth it. Alistair says, it is a disgrace that Christians are allowing our lands to be stained by this filth. I love Iranians, their devils ruling them will face the full wrath of God. I am yet to meet a peaceful, loving Muslim. Another one says, let's not forget Israel gave Iran weapons during the Iran and Iraq war. Both Iran and Israel worked together to destroy the Arab countries. That's not true. Israel is also with the Arabs, to make Iran the bad guy. So US sells weapons. That's not really the situation. I don't think many people know the exact situation when it comes to the Middle East throughout centuries and also the last few decades, the last 8-9 decades. It's not as black and white as it seems. So obviously, when the Shah of Iran was still in charge, we had constitutional monarchy in Iran, and then it turned into absolute monarchy for a little bit. There was a situation where the Arab countries were led by, obviously, dictators, but they were more secular and they were slightly more sensible. That's not the right word, sensible, because you had Saddam Hussein and the others as well. But Saddam was also doing his part to keep the Islamist nutters slightly quiet in Iraq. Of course, when we got rid of Saddam, the whole thing got much worse. There was a situation where the communists in Iraq were helping, the Iranian communists in Iraq were helping Saddam Hussein when it came to the conflict between Iran and Iraq. The Americans they were also directly and indirectly supporting Saddam at the beginning of the conflict, because they thought they could just take out the Iranian regime. This is the same Iranian regime that the CIA helped install to do a coup against the Shah. The whole thing completely backfired on the Americans. Anyway, the Arab countries, not necessarily Islamic, of course, by default they are all Islamic, but Arab establishments, Arab states, from UAE to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, even Jordan to an extent, they all work with both the Israeli side as well as the Shah of Iran when he was in charge, because they believed there was instability. Even Egypt at one point were still trying to go with stability. They all had one thing in common. The Arab world, Israel, and the Shah of Iran, the common enemy they had was Islamism. And now the whole thing's completely kicking off. So this sort of assessment is not correct when it comes to the history of the Middle East. Luigi says the Islamic occupation of Israel was ended in 1917. They still occupy Iran, Lebanon, Sudan, and Nigeria. If colonialism is wrong, then the Islamic colonial empire should be answering questions, not asking. Well, Islam obviously has always been expansionist. We know that. They got close to, obviously, to Spain as well. But it's still expansionist. And the whole point of it is to expand to the rest of the world. But nobody criticizes that, which is kind of funny. This person is back saying it's always Iranian-backed, but they never say Chinese-backed Islamic Republic. I think they always say that anyway. We always say it. And even, to be fair, in the mainstream media, when it's relevant, they always mention the role of the Chinese Communist Party in backing the Islamic Republic. The Iranian regime, the Islamic occupiers, have essentially sold off parts of Iran to China. What's going on? The cat says, so wait, so the Shah was the old one? I know the Ayatollah now is the nut jobs. Well, I mean, the actual Shah, Shah means king. The last king in Iran was pushed out in 1979 by the CIA and the Islamic occupiers with the help of the communists, the far left. His son is alive, obviously the crown prince. So that's basically he's the rightful king. But since then, we've had the Ayatollahs. We had 2 so far in terms of the supreme leaders. Adir says, Israel did not win yet. Did not win yet. I mean, has not won yet. There are still 3 brigades in Gaza that hold hostages and threaten Israel. Yeah, I don't think this person understood what we said about the situation in Gaza. No one has said Israel have won. We've simply said Hamas have lost and the Iranian regime have lost. They have lost Gaza. They can no longer come back and take control of it unless Israel surrenders and does some sort of negotiation. Gaza is lost. Doesn't mean Israel has completely won. We already explained earlier that they're still trying to find Yahya Sinwar and the hostages. But they have control over most of Gaza. The problem is that the nutters are in tunnels. They're not on the ground and they don't fight fairly. They don't fight with actual official army uniforms. They essentially hide among civilians and you can't really tell which one's which. That's why they are still in this mess. Right. See if we have any more reaction from you guys. You would think everyone would learn from the past wars, but no, it's the same thing with all of humanity every time. They are all mostly capable of just one thing, destruction of oneself. Yeah, we don't learn from history. Hang on, 1 second. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we never learn from history, and that this again, it's not really the first time that obvious cases from history examples have been used to teach people, but we don't really learn, and that applies to everybody on this planet. It's not really just about the Western world. Another super chat from Israel saying Mossad shekels here. Israeli citizens are tired of it, but we are ready for the escalation and keep up. And keep your health up. Thank you very much for the support, Mossad. Mossad is everywhere. All right. Will Israel have to handle multiple front wars like the first Israel-Arab? They are technically already doing it, but not directly. Not directly at the same time. So they are being threatened, obviously, from the north when it comes to Hezbollah, from the Gaza side to an extent. And you still have situation from some of the terrorists from Jordan. You have the Houthis from Yemen. You know, nobody took them seriously. And the Iranian regime. So they are still being targeted. But yes, it hasn't happened as wide as it happened before. It could happen, but it won't be Israel-Arab war this time. It would just basically be Israel-Iran. Because most of the Arab world, the powerful countries are cooperating. Saudi Arabia, UAE, to an extent Jordan, you know, despite what the Jordanian politicians have to say, you know, they're not really going to be attacking Israel. Even Egypt don't have the bravery to directly anger the Western world. So the biggest issue we're going to have is Turkey, again, not directly Turkey, but Turkey supporting the Islamists through Erdogan and of course the Iranian regime through the Chinese Communist Party. Hopefully it's not going to escalate, although a lot of people are just sick and tired of it and want the Iranian regime to go away. Hopefully not at the cost of a lot of us innocent civilians losing their lives. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi and we are the media.